If racism is taught, then what happens when those children grow up? Dr. Fred Price read a letter over 30 years ago warning us about attitudes passed from parent to child. And today, those same attitudes still exist, just better hidden. Welcome back to Renew Your Mind. In today's video, we're revisiting a powerful letter President Bill Clinton wrote to a college graduating class. A letter Dr. Fred Price read during his Race, Religion, Racism series. And in that message, he said something many people still deny, that children are taught to be racist. And when you fast forward 30 years later, you can see the truth of that statement everywhere. Yes, laws changed. Yes, opportunities expanded, but the attitudes, many of them didn't disappear. They simply learned how to hide.
But I believe the greatest challenge we face is also our greatest opportunity. Of all the questions of discrimination and prejudice that still exist in our society, the most perplexing one is the oldest and in some ways today, the newest. The problem of race. Though minorities have more opportunities than ever today, we still see evidence of bigotry, from the desecration of houses of worship, whether they be churches, synagogues, or mosques, to demeaning talk in corporate suites. There is still much work to be done by you, members of the class of 1997. But those who say we cannot transform the problem of prejudice into the promise of unity forget how far we have come. And I cannot believe they have ever seen a crowd like you. I grew up in the high drama of the Cold War. In the patriotic South, black and white Southerners alike wore our nation's uniform in defense of freedom against communism. They fought and died together, from Korea to Vietnam. But back home, I went to segregated schools, swam in segregated pools, sat in all white sections at the movies, and traveled through small towns in my state that still mark the restrooms and water fountains white and colored. By the grace of God, I had a grandfather with just a grade school education, but the heart of a true American who taught me that it was wrong. Now, I want to pause right there, because this is one of the things and one of the purposes that I have been dealing with in this presentation on racism. The problem is not a genetic problem. In other words, racism, racial and color prejudice is not transmitted in the genes. It is a learned response. It is something that you can be taught. And in our country, it's primarily a problem of those who came before us teaching their children. Because if you stop and think about it, if we just use a historical landmark, for instance, like the end of the Civil War, 1865, it has been a lot of years since the end of the Civil War. And when the so-called slaves were set free and were emancipated, and supposedly racism was nipped in the bud, and it was supposed to be over, then how could it be up here where we live? It has to have a carrier. It has to have a host to transmit the foul thing. And it's not genetically transmitted, because if it was in the genes, then everybody in the whole world would be racist. And they're not. So then it had to be taught. And I want you to get what the president said. He was taught on the other side of it. He was taught a positive. But notice where it came from. It came from the teaching that he received. I want you to get that because it's so important. And there are a lot of people, I've said it before, but a lot of people, they balk at it, they get mad with me, and they want to become defensive. And obviously, I've said it 1,000 times, and I'll continue to say it. We're not talking about everybody. We know better than that, but we know that there are too many, and they're the ones that keep the thing going and keep the pot boiling. So catch up on this now. Listen to this again.
You know, as we reflect on this letter 3 decades later, the data tells a story we can't ignore. Now, listen to this. It says 63% of Black Americans say racism is a major problem in the U.S. today. Now, this is from a poll called the Pew Research, and this is from 2023. So not from 1998, you know, when Dr. Price read this letter that about Bill Clinton, well, President Bill Clinton. This is from 2023. And I'll give you a little more, some more statistics here. It says nearly 70% of Americans believe people learn racial bias from family and environment. So not from personal experience. And this is from the APA poll, and this is from 2022. So we got 63% of Black Americans saying racism is a major problem in the U.S. today from the Pew Research in 2023. And then we have nearly 70%, not just blacks, but all Americans, 70% of Americans believe people learn racial bias from family and environment and not from personal experience. And this is from the APA poll in 2022. And then we also have, says as children as young as 3 years old show signs of racial preference based on what they observe at home and in the media. And this is from the Yale Child Study Center. So children as young as 3. Now you got to remember, with a child, especially at that age, I mean, they're taking in things like a sponge. Why? Because they're learning how to walk. They're learning how to talk. They're learning how to do everything, especially at the age of 3. So like I said, they're taking things in like a sponge. So if you curse around that child a lot, well, guess what? They're going to learn how to curse. If you show them math problems all the time, well, guess what? They're going to be proficient in math as they get older. If you read to them all the time and showing them how to learn how to read, well, guess what? They're going to be well-versed in knowing how to read. Well, the same thing applies when you show a racial bias toward another race. Okay. They pick up on this. If you're saying out loud that, oh, I don't like this black person, and then they see who identifies as being black. It's the same if you can teach your dog how to not like black people. You show them the color of the skin, so to speak. And this has been documented also. You can train a dog to hate black people. So it's the same effect. It's how you are reared. It's what you are shown in your environment. And also, I'll give you one more. And despite progress, hate crimes have risen 20% in the last 5 years. And this is from an FBI report or poll. No, this is from the FBI report. And this is from 2024. So hate crimes have risen 20% in the past 5 years. Now, I don't have to say, and those who know the reason why that has happened because of a certain Nah, I can't say just because of a certain person, but that certain person has, how to put this, has made the ground, so to speak, more accepting of hate crimes because of because of their views, because of the way they conduct their business. I'll put it that way. You read between the lines, right? Okay. All right. You're smart enough to read between the lines. Oh, boy.
By the grace of God, I had a grandfather with just a grade school education, but the heart of a true American, who taught me that it was wrong. And by the grace of God, there were brave African Americans like Congressman John Lewis, who risked their lives time and time again to make it right. And there were white Americans like Congressman Bob Filner, Filner, a freedom rider on the bus with John Lewis in the long, noble struggle for civil rights, who knew that it was a struggle to free white people too. Let me say that I know that for many white Americans, this conversation may seem to exclude them or threaten them. That must not be so. I believe white Americans have just as much to gain as anybody else from being a part of the endeavor, much to gain from an America where we finally take responsibility for all our children so that they at last can be judged as Martin Luther King hoped, not by the color of their skin, but by the content of their character. End of quote. Now, you black folk and you white folk and you red, brown, and yellow folk that want to get up on your high horse and act like there is no such thing as racism and racial prejudice in this nation and in the church. I hope you just listen to what I read. This is your chief executive officer. All other things aside, he be still the head of the country. This be the boss man. And he's telling you that we got a problem with racism and racial prejudice. Thank you, Mr. President.
So yes, progress is real, but so is the reality that racism didn't vanish. It evolved. It became quieter. It's become more polite. It's more coded. It's more disguised. And Dr. Price warned us that if racism is taught, it must also be untaught. And that work is still in front of us today. Now, if this message has challenged you, share it. Please share it. If it opened your eyes, comment below. And if it reminded you of the truth, then stay with me as we continue renewing our minds one conversation at a time. Enough said.